When's shit
We can
over,
start on the Chiefs offense versus the 49ers defense. And Dels, let's start with you. What do you think about this matchup? How do you think the Chiefs offense can exploit what the Niners are doing, and how do you think the Niners can counteract whatever they do?
I'm curious to see what the 49ers are going to be willing to give up to this Chiefs offense, because throughout the last few seasons, we've seen defenses allow Patrick Mahomes to take the underneath stuff, the short stuff, saying, listen, we're going to play a lot of too high. We're not going to let you get beat down the field. But this playoffs, Mahomes has been throwing it down the field 20-plus yards, more than he has basically in his entire career. The only year that's comparable is 2019. This season, 8.7% of his attempts are 20-plus yards. The last 3 years, 7%, 5.7, 6.8. And that 2019 season I mentioned was at 8.9%. And just the way Mahomes has progressed, of course, year one, he was damn near the best quarterback in the league. Now he's undisputed best quarterback in the league, and it's not Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It's Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady and Joe Montana. This is the type of dude he's become just in year six, and the mental progression he has had. I think he even said in an interview it took him to his second or third year to really understand defenses, be able to read them in the pre-snap adjustments. He has every trick in his bag, right? It's hard for the 49ers when I'm looking at their defense, if I'm trying to be their defensive coordinator, try to get into the mind to figure out what I would do against Patrick Mahomes, there's no easy fix, right? There's no blitzing like you did against, well, not them, but blitz against Jalen Hurts, right? There's nothing that obvious that there's a super big weakness on the Chiefs offense that you could just straight up exploit. If you play zone against him, he's been great against zone in the postseason. If you play man against him, you basically have to have a spy there because he's one of the best scramblers, especially on third down, extending drives, extending plays. And the one area that I think he could be quote unquote exposed, or really the one area that he's struggled with this season, was against the blitz. In the postseason, he completed just 62% of his passes, only one big time throw per PFF, and an 80.7 passer rating. To be fair, in the regular season, he was really good against the blitz. 10th highest passer rating, 7-2 touchdown interception ratio, 3% turnover-worthy play rate. But the one area he struggled all season long, regular season and postseason, is when he's under pressure. Now, it's difficult to pressure Patrick Mahomes as is, just because even though the offense line's going to be a bit more banged up, but he's just so mobile inside and outside the pocket that you could get pressure on him and he's able to escape it and find guys downfield and, make these crazy throws that we've seen really throughout his career. But this season specifically, especially in the playoffs, he's only completed 45% of his passes and a 68 passer rating was under pressure. So the 49ers way, if you want to somehow limit this offense or be able to hone in on Patrick Mahomes, you have to get pressure there. The thing is, it's difficult to do that. Now, with the injuries to their offensive line, with Tooney being out, I think there's more hope. You could just send 4 and get pressure there, but I just know Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to have an answer for that. Yep. I just know they're going to be able to, whatever they're going to send at him on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have an answer. Regular season, he struggled against the blitz as well. 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 20th in passer rating. But if the 49ers want to limit Patrick Mahomes, and if they want to win this game, I think they're going to have to send some sort of exotic blitzes where they're going to have to figure out a way to blitz Patrick Mahomes in a way that maybe the Niners haven't shown on film this season, which is going to be difficult to do. We have basically 4 or 5 months of film out there. It's going to be very difficult to do. And when you do blitz him, if you do not get pressure, you are screwed. So when you send more than 4 guys, you have to get him under pressure. If you're able to make him uncomfortable in the pocket, that's when we've seen, especially in the regular season, he have those mistakes. So it's going to be very difficult to do. It's easier said than done, but that's the one area I see for the 49ers defense to be able to attack this Chiefs offense, send some exotic blitzes, get him under pressure, try to force a turnover.
It's going to be a very, very interesting game, if you ask me. I'll say this: Joel hit a lot of topics when it comes to, of course, Mahomes and the success rate when he's faced against certain defenses. But I'm just going to talk about the offense generally, where, of course, EPA-wise, they've had a lot of success in this postseason. And when it comes to dropback success rate, they've had a lot of success this season. But I talked about the Niners' defense, their pass defense, and I feel like it's been getting a little bit overblown about how bad it's been, where right now in the postseason, they rank 4th in terms of dropback success rate of 43.9, basically 44%. Number 1 is the Kansas City Chiefs at 41.3. So they've been better, the Kansas City Chiefs, but not that far off, there is the San Francisco 49ers. Where the San Francisco 49ers do struggle is stopping the run. We saw Aaron Jones do it. We saw David Montgomery do it. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs do it, and although he did have a fumble, he obviously was effective early on in that game. The one thing I will say that is a weakness, if there were to be one on this Kansas City Chiefs team, would be their rush offense in terms of efficiency. Where Isaiah Pacheco, when we talk about prize picks later, I'm going more on the touchdowns. I think he's going to be able to get into the end zone because they're going to be able to move the ball early on in this game. I do believe so. We've seen the Niners to be a second-half team in these playoffs so far. The Chiefs have proven to be a second-half team throughout the entirety of the career, but throughout the entirety of Mahomes' career. But this season more so, it's been establish your game early on, like we saw against the Ravens, like we saw against Miami early on in the season. Get your points early in the game, hold defensively in the second half. Of course, they would have liked to score in the second half. They're not trying not to score, but we've seen them successful in the first, not so successful in the second, but the defense hold. In this matchup, we've seen Isaiah Pacheco be able to do a job, but not overly successful, where on the ground they've only had a success rate of 31.2. And if you look at going up against the Niners, I think Pacheco still will be able to have himself a solid game. I do expect him to get into the end zone, but at least there's one thing that you can hold on to if you're the Niners defense is, hey, Patrick Mahomes has been really good this postseason, but we have the players on the line to pressure him. Mahomes is still going to be able to evade. He's still going to be able to do his normal scramble, evade pressure, move for a first down. I don't have concerns about Rashee. I know that Travis Kelce is going to have himself an amazing ball game, especially with the way that he's been playing. I do have my concerns about this Chiefs offensive line, but I had concerns against the Baltimore Ravens with their offensive line, and that proved to be a non-factor as he only got sacked once in that game. So it's going to be a tough matchup for this Niners defense, especially if Pacheco gets going, because if Pacheco gets going, then it's really all hands on deck if you're the San Francisco 49ers. But the key, like Joel mentioned, 100%, is to make him as uncomfortable as possible. That's the key every time you go up against Patrick Mahomes, but we've seen teams so often fail to do so. I think the key is Nick Bosa needs to be a game changer. We need to see Chase Young have his best game as a 49er this upcoming Sunday. But I still believe that the Chiefs will be able to put up a good amount of points on this defense. I think that it won't be as difficult to come across points, obviously, against the Baltimore Ravens. But I think the Niners defense is just slightly better than what it's been given credit for so far this postseason. But do anticipate Patrick Mahomes to have a solid game.
The Niners defense concerns me. They concern me because Steve Wilks is predictable. How they line up defensively, they're a 4-down front defense, which means that there's only going to be 4 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage, and they're going to have their 3 linebackers back with their defensive backs behind them, 4 of them. They're going to be in a lot of base defense, and what happens when you do that is, if you have 4 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage and you have 5 offensive linemen on the line of scrimmage, you're leaving bubbles in these gaps for running backs to run through. And because of how hyper-aggressive these defensive linemen have been, Nick Bosa, Chase Young, they're susceptible to run to the outside. You saw the Packers get them on that. You saw the Lions get them on that on the touchdown that Jameson Williams scored on. So I think that they're going to have a tough time stopping the run.
Sure. This
year. They rank 28th in EPA per run. On pin and pull runs, they are very susceptible. They're 30th in adjusted line yards to the left and 20th to the right. This is a terrible run defense. And I think while they will attack the middle of this defense, I think that if they don't have Joe Tooney, it's probably going to be better if they go to the outside because you're going to run into Hargrave and Armstead, and they can probably overwhelm one of the guards. But when you have 5 versus 4, you can double team one of those guys. So there's just gaps in this run defense that just the way they play, the foundation, their philosophy, they allow a lot of big-time runs. So I think that Pacheco actually has a case or a dark horse case to be one of the best offensive players in this game.
He has a strong chance to do so.
And I look at the Niners defense. I think it's predictable, and I think right now they're lacking in getting pressure. 80% of the time, they're only sending 4. So they're not blitzing. They're rarely blitzing. You know what they're going to do. Whatever they show whatever they show pre-snap, they're doing post-snap. They've only blitzed on 7.7 dropbacks like all year. They're not blitzing much. They trust their 4-man rush because oftentimes their 4-man rush overwhelms offensive lines. In the playoffs, they have a 37.2 pressure percentage, which would rank 12th. And in the regular season, they had a 7.2% sack rate. In the playoffs, it's been 2.3. They have not been able to get after the quarterback. Now, one of those instances, you're facing Jordan Love, who doesn't take sacks, and then you're facing Jared Goff, who has a great offensive line. But Mahomes, who is historically great at not taking sacks, I think it's going to be tough to trust your four-man rush to get home on him and to get pressure. And the Chiefs this year are number one in pass block win rate in the NFL. I do worry with some of the matchups. I think Bosa can overwhelm Jawan Taylor. Sure. I think Chase Young can get the better of Donovan Smith.
He might be starting on Sunday.
I think he will start still. You know, like Nick Allegretti is going to be playing for Joe Thuney, and you're going to have Hargrave or Armstead on him. You know, there are matchups to be had on this offensive line, but I think they're going to do a great job at chipping and just giving Bosa different looks and different blocks, so you just buy Mahomes that split second of time to allow passes. Nick Allegretti, he subbed in for Joe Thuney last week, and he was terrible. He allowed 4 pressures, a sack. He wasn't good, and it was a big reason why they weren't able to get their offense going in the second half. And then against the pass, I think how I envision the Chiefs going out there is I think they're going to go out there in heavier personnel. I think they're going to run a lot of 13 personnel. They're going to try to really run the ball on San Fran, but they've also been great at passing out of those looks because compared to the playoffs and the regular season, Travis Kelce has been used more as an inline tight end, and that has allowed him to be more of a pass catcher on these play action passes or just getting the defense into a base look so he has mismatches. And considering the 49ers play a lot of zone defense, I just think that Mahomes is going to carve that apart. I think when you look at Mahomes, the stats versus where he is on the spectrum of how great he is don't correlate because there's no doubt in my mind that this year Mahomes is better than when he had 50 touchdowns. So he's better than last year as well. Mahomes has matured so much in his process and mentally that we know he can be a game changer, but like the Ravens in the second half, they didn't score. He also was being super cautious with the ball. Because when they needed a first down, he made that play to MVS, which, you know, the gravity of Travis Kelce allowed that to happen. But Mahomes, when the chips are on the line, he's going to make a play. And I just think that right now he knows the defense that he has on the field. He's just being smart and not having negative plays. He hasn't had negative plays in the playoffs since dating back to last year pretty much. And I think that Travis Kelce now in the playoffs, he's been unlocked much more. He's been averaging more yards run per route in the slot and in line as a tight end. The Rashee Rice matchup concerns me a little bit, actually.
Makes sense.
Because 27% of his routes come from crossing routes. And when you play a zone defense, you're not running away from a particular man. So on those crossing routes, you're running into another spaces where players are in those zones. And I also think that if they man up on some occasions, if Charvarius Ward is that matchup, I think Charvarius Ward is just going to get the better of that. So Rashee Rice in this game worries me, but I think if they're able to run the ball well, I think a big part of this game is going to be screen passes. The Niners are one of the worst defenses against screens. I think they're going to get a lot of screens out to Pacheco or to the boundary to Rashee or to Kelce. I think the Chiefs are going to run the ball. They're going to incorporate a lot of quick and screen passes. And Kelce in those vacated zones, I think he's going to do a great job of sitting down and just finding a lane for Mahomes to throw into. I think the Chiefs offense is going to have a really great game against the Niners on Sunday. I don't feel comfortable or confident in this Niners defense at all. Based off what I've seen in these playoffs, I feel like there's just a lot of holes there that a more mature play caller and quarterback, they'd exploit.
I don't think that's wrong to say. You know, I think we just watched Mahomes put on, you know, elite game managing performances against the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. You know, two different type of defense that provided two different type of game plans, and he pretty much exploited both. You know, granted, he didn't score a lot in the second half of either games, but like you mentioned it, which is extremely important. Not many turnovers. Not really no turnovers, no turnover-worthy plays, you know, just not putting the offense in terrible positions, you know, just being the perfect game manager while also giving you a hint of some game-breaking plays, some big-time moments. And I think that's what he's going to have to do, and I think he's been doing that, you know, and I think it's easy to say, you know, we have Mahomes, the offense is going to be fine, because truthfully, that's all you have to say. He's shown you that over history that if you have Mahomes, no matter who's out there, he's going to be great. They're going to run the ball. I think that's just like the easiest thing to say. They're going to run the ball. You're going to see a lot of Kelsey and mismatches, Mahomes making short routes, plays. Like, it's not going to be – I don't think they're going to have a shit ton of big plays, but there's going to be a lot of 3rd and 5s, good one, 2nd and 6s, like those type of plays. And I think with this Niners defense, what we saw from the Lions game is that there is a lot of holes, but at the same time, their run defense is very vulnerable. You know, even when they do – hop out of zone and they go into man, sometimes they're still not good. You know, so I think this Chiefs offense can have a day. I think to stop this Chiefs offense is for the Niners to have a complete perfect offensive game. I think they're going to have to, that Niners offense is going to have a lot of pressure because I think this Chiefs offense is going to be able to score at an efficient rate. And I think defensively, the fact that they can stop any offense in the league, the Niners are going to have to play perfect ball in the offensive end. They're going to have to limit the Brock Purdy's going to have to limit the turnovers, limit the turnover-worthy plays. He's not going to be able to take sacks. Like, he's going to have to be more perfect than what Mahomes has already been because I think this defense for the Chiefs, it just gives you so many opportunities. It gives you so many leeways. And even though Mahomes hasn't made any mistakes, even if he did, this Chiefs defense is just so good. They put you in pretty much perfect position that they can stop any offense in the league right now. So I think with Mahomes and Kelsey, like Pacheco it definitely should be a dark horse because I think him running the ball, you know, he's going to have to go up the middle, hit the sides. But I think Mahomes is kind of going to have one of those games kind of like when he played against the Chiefs. Like, it is going to be big-time statistical, but you're going to look at it, watch
the
it.
Ravens, you mean?
No, I'm talking against the Eagles, pardon me, in the Super Bowl, where it may not be the statistical dominance, but if you watch it, he had a great game. You know, he was able to –
perfect,
yeah, he had a great game. And I think a lot of pressure is going to be on the Niners offense, but I think the Chiefs offense will be fine.
Do you think that the Niners offense is going to struggle?
There's definitely opportunities for it to struggle. If the Chiefs get out to an early lead and now they have to pass consistently and now CMC is not going to be able to be as much of as relied on as much, I think that, yeah, it can struggle.
Yeah.
That's where you do have your worries because the Kansas City Chiefs are the number 1 defense in terms of drop-back success rate in the postseason so far.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if we want to get into the 49ers offense
Yeah.
versus Chiefs defense, I think regardless of game script, the 49ers offense is going to struggle. These last 2 weeks, the 49ers offense has been far from perfect, and they've been able to win just because straight up I think they've been more talented than the opposition, especially when we look at that Packers game who was, I don't want to call them in over their head because that's discrediting them, but when you look, especially coming into the season, the expectations for the Packers, the expectations for the 49ers, of course, Jordan Love breaks out, top 10 quarterback, and the conversation changes, but these last 2 weeks they've won, but I haven't really been impressed or moved to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, Brock Purdy is ready to go up against Spags in this defense and he's going to have himself a day. So regardless if the Niners get up early, the Chiefs get up early, I think they're going to struggle. And the number one thing I'm looking for the 49ers offense versus the Chiefs defense is Shanahan versus Spags, right? When I was talking about at least the Chiefs, it was how is Patrick Mahomes going to have success against the Niners defense personnel-wise? But to me, this is coaching because you have Spags, who blitzes the most out of basically everyone in the league, and you have Brock Purdy, who has been one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz in the NFL over these last 3 games. Against Tua, talking about the Chiefs defense, against Tua, he was pressured or he was blitzed on 28% of dropbacks. Tua struggled. He completed 4 of 11 passes. Against Josh Allen, he blitzed on 29% of dropbacks, so about the same. Allen had a lot more success. He was 8 for 11, got the ball out within 2.2 seconds. Against Lamar, he blitzed by far the most, 43% of his dropbacks, and Lamar struggled, completed less than 50% of his passes. He held onto the ball way too long, 3.4 seconds. Look at Josh at 2.2 seconds. A lot of that was Lamar running around, trying to find somebody. Wasn't able to do it. But Brock Purdy against the blitz this year, 2nd in completion percentage, 1st in yards per attempt, 1st in passing touchdowns, 1st in passer rating. So you really have strength versus strength here, where Spags is able to come up with these exotic blitzes and probably show stuff that Purdy hasn't seen so far in his NFL career. Spags, I think, has solidified himself coming into this postseason as one of the top defensive minds, but as we stand now, probably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Chiefs blitz at the 5th highest mark this regular season, had a 63% success rate, which is 3rd best in the NFL. And then you have Purdy and Shanahan, who were one of the best against the blitz. It's going to be tough, I think, even though Purdy has been able to have success against the blitz. I think this is going to be different. I don't look at this as the same. Purdy is first across the board in all of his statistics. Spags is going to do his thing, but Purdy's going to be able to beat it. These last two games have really shown me that I don't know if Brock Purdy and the 49ers are ready for this moment against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to go ahead and spoil my pick, but that's how I feel about this 49ers offense right now. I think in the middle of the season, when they went a little 3-4 game losing streak, I was like, I'm just going to relax. It's October. Let's figure it out. They looked really good down the stretch outside that L against Baltimore. But then these last two games in the playoffs, this is where I wanted them to show me the most consistency, having the most success. Brock Purdy being able to consistently live up to those moments, because this is where we are now. It's the Super Bowl, right? It's not time to talk about Brock Purdy. Well, he's Mr. Irrelevant, second year, 7th round pick, all of this. That goes out the window. Now you're in the Super Bowl going up against a dynasty, against the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. You have to be damn near perfect to be able to beat Kansas City and the Chiefs. We saw last year, Jalen Hurts was perfect outside of one play. They lost by 3 points. That one play, whether you like it or not, if that doesn't happen, they probably win that game. So Brock Purdy has to be damn near perfect, in my opinion, to be able to win this game. There's a different side of the ball. I'm sure Drew and you guys are going to be talking about the run game. But to win a Super Bowl, to beat Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have success throwing the ball. I have my worries about Brock Purdy in this matchup.
I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Delimart. I understand for the fact of we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs limit the MVP of the league. He just had his worst game of the season, or I should say most disappointing game, I should say, because he had his moments of playing good, but also he left you wanting more. Josh Allen had himself a great game, but when the Chiefs defense needed to step up, they did. Against Tua, masterclass by that Chiefs defense, no way around it. And yes, Tua didn't play good. So on top of it, Brock Purdy has had spurts of high-level play. No consistency outside of the second half for the Detroit Lions, but there was still an entire first half where he didn't do anything over the top. I think that interception, yes, it's on the stat sheet, but got tipped at the line, went right into the defender's hands. But he didn't do anything to help their situation in the first half outside of that first possession where, of course, they missed out on some points. Against the Packers, he didn't play well until that last drive of the game. And now you're going up against the best defense in the playoffs. Number two, I'll put the Baltimore Ravens because I think they had an excellent showing personally, only allowing 17 points to the Kansas City Chiefs, falling short. It's unfortunate that your offense couldn't do more for you, couldn't capitalize more on their opportunity. But there is a path for success for the for the San Francisco 49ers, and that is Mr. CMC, Mr. Offensive Player of the Year. In 2 games, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he has done an unbelievable job of backpacking this offense when need be. In both games, they were trailing. They did not go away from the run. They stayed true. They kept giving the ball to Christian McCaffrey. Averaged over 5 yards a carry in the first game versus the Packers, 4.5 yards per carry against the Detroit Lions, whose rush defense is great or has been really great this season. I look at the Kansas City Chiefs. If there is a weakness, it is the rush defense. Where we look at the rush defense for the Niners, it is worse than theirs. But who's right next to them in terms of success rate? The Kansas City Chiefs. I do anticipate that it will be a little bit different because we know their secondary is so elite, talking about Kansas City. And if the Chiefs get out to a lead similar to Baltimore, I do worry about how is Brock going to be able to overcome in this moment. It is the Super Bowl. But again, we've seen him in 2 games back-to-back trail and be able to rise to the occasion. It's just different when you're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I do anticipate that this offense can have success. I don't believe that it'll be a complete shutdown. I feel like that's disrespectful to Kyle Shanahan, understanding that he is one of the best play callers in the game. And that's also disrespectful to CMC. There's no way to take CMC out of the game, whether it be getting work in the passing game, of course, screens. We know that they run him on routes too. And he's going to be effective as a rusher, so long as they stay true to the run. I said this to you in the car, and I firmly believe this now. CMC needs to touch the ball 30 times this game. You made that trade 2 years ago for this moment right now. If you win this game, he should be hoisting the Super Bowl MVP trophy. That's how firmly I believe they need to rely on Christian McCaffrey, because this matchup, if they were to win, is destined for him to have a great game. They need him to be their best player if they want to win this game offensively. I think Brock obviously needs to play great in his own right. You said that earlier. It's 100% true. It's a matter of, do you trust Mahomes to play well, just well enough to outscore the the Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. That's the gamble you're taking. And usually it's not quarterback versus quarterback in these situations, but that's kind of how I've come to view this game. Am I going to gamble on Patrick Mahomes, who we all know my feelings on the Kansas City Chiefs, we know my feelings on Patrick Mahomes, or am I going to gamble on Brock Purdy, who he's been pretty damn good in these moments, but is he that? That's what I've kind of had my back and forth struggle with, where I know Brock has to be the most important player on this team because he is the quarterback. He is the most valuable. But I do believe CMC in this game, if they want a chance to win it, he needs to touch the ball 30 times.
Well, I think that for the Niners, when you go up against the number one thing is taking away CMC, or at least trying to limit him. And I think in these first two playoff games that the 49ers have had, McCaffrey has averaged half a yard before contact per rush with a 16.7% success rate. They haven't ran the ball particularly well. I felt like the Packers and the Lions were selling out on the run. I don't know if Spags is going to do that because I feel like for me, I'd rather let you rush for 8 yards than leave one of my corners one-on-one and you get an explosive 40-yard play down the field. I think the most important thing in this matchup is something that Del has mentioned. I think it's how Brock Purdy handles the blitz, how this offense has answers for pressure, because all those stats, him being number one versus the blitz, they're all fine, but you can blitz and not get pressure. And when you blitz and you don't get pressure, that's when Brock Purdy is really well. His two most pressured games were against the Browns and the Ravens. Those were his two worst of the season, arguably. In the playoffs, Brock Purdy has been pressured on 44% of blitzes. He has a 29.1% success rate on those versus...
You said Browns and which one?
Ravens.
Got it.
And 72.4% with no pressure. So Brock Purdy, when he is getting pressured on these blitzes, there's just no answers or enough time to come up with answers on the fly. And I think the number one thing for the Chiefs to do is to design blitzes that gets Brock Purdy on the move and out of the pocket. Because if you have Trent McDuffie coming off a corner blitz unblocked and he's chasing down Brock Purdy, for as great as Brock Purdy has been out of structure in moments, he's not going to outrun Trent McDuffie.
No.
So he's going to have to either throw it away or he's going to throw it into harm's way if there's a defender right there. So I think that right there, the how the Niners handle the blitz to me is the single most important thing of this game, because I think Spagnuolo is not going to load the box up a ton against the Niners. I think he's going to be very cognitive of the fact that he doesn't want explosive plays down the field, and you'd rather die by 1,000 cuts than a couple slashes. So I think that's what I have a feeling Spags is going to do. Versus the Lions sent a defensive back blitz 9 times. They got pressured 3 times against Purdy, and on those pressures, he was negative 0.16 EPA, so he wasn't very good. And I feel like something that can work against the Niners is that they play with a lot of condensed formations. And when you play with condensed formations and you're not spread out on the field, you make the defensive backs that much closer to get after the quarterback. And what Steve Spagnuolo does the best is design free rushers unblocked to the quarterback. So I think that's going to be the single most important thing for the Chiefs. I do think CMC has to have a great game. I think he has to rush for $150, 2 touchdowns for them to win this game. I think this is not going to be a great passing performance from the Niners. And I think the defensive backs on this team match up very well with Snead and Ayuk. I think that's going to be a dogfight. I think McDuffie and Debo in the moments that they match up, I'm curious to see how they handle CMC more so in the pass game. Because what they love doing, and something that it's difficult to handle with Shanahan, because Shanahan in the past, last time these teams faced, it was a run-centric team. Shanahan now feels much more comfortable spreading out the field going into shotgun because Purdy is much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And they run 21 personnel, so 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, and the other running back is usually Juszczyk. They can be in condensed formations, but with the similar personnel, they can be spread out. They'll have Juszczyk on the outside with Debo and Kittle and CMC all running routes down the field. And that's usually when they have CMC run his bumper motion, which is him kind of going behind the line of scrimmage here. I don't know who was going to cover CMC on that. And that's what worries me the most. And that's what will keep me up at night the most on Spagnuolo Is it Nick Bolton? Do I have Justin Reed follow? Am I doubling CMC and now I'm putting one on Kittle and Debo and Ayuk?
Because Nick Bolton follows, but then what happens with Kittle there?
Yeah, and even if Nick Bolton follows, like CMC is going to destroy him one-on-one.
For sure.
So like that right there, I think is something that I'm curious to see how C. Spagnuolo is going to plan for. But the toughest part about facing his defense is just the disguises that he uses.
For sure.
Him and Steve Wilks are so different in the fact that Wilks, whatever you see is what you're going to get. With Spags, something that is cover 1 can turn into cover 4 post snap or cover 3 or cover 2, and it can look like they're sending the house, but then they drop everybody back, or sometimes they're just sending everybody. I think Lamar Jackson got caught on a couple of those when they were getting blitzed, and then Spagnuolo just said, you know what, I'm going to show the same look, and I'm going to drop back 5 straight times.
Genius.
And with that, like it's just a lot to deal with. And I think if Purdy does have an excellent game against this particular defense, then he deserves a lot of credit, because I think this is the best defense in the NFL. And the difference between me picking them and the Ravens is that I just think the Chiefs are led by one of the best defensive play callers that we've seen in this generation.
Man, you know,
It's always on, man, you know.
I prayed on this, man. You know, when Purdy came in and he did his thing, I prayed on this. If it wasn't going to be my boys out there in Philly, it had to be somebody else, man. And I think this is the perfect ending to a great story. You know, what can it be if the most irrelevant man in the draft ends a dynasty, man? You know, what type of story would that be on the news, just in the magazines, on the Athletic? Shout out to them, great articles they like to write. What can it be?
CMC wins MVP. The story's gonna be Brock.
Undoubtedly.
No, that's what's going to happen.
Or Brock wins MVP and they win.
If Brock wins MVP,
oh man, this would be a story.
Streets win.
Streets already won. But I'll say this though. I think this is a big Kittle game. I do think this could be a really big Kittle game. You know, you mentioned Trent McDuffie and Snead guarding Ayuk and Debo. I don't know if they have an answer for George Kittle. I think George Kittle, Brock Purdy, that connection is sound. It's perfect with them two. I think Kittle could have a big game. At this point, we expect CMC to have a big game. You know, we expect CMC to score TDs. I do think they're going to run the ball a lot. My concern is, on a down-to-down consistent basis, how is Purdy going to look? Is he going to struggle like he did against the Lions and against the Packers? I feel like a lot of those passes that he were throwing were ducks. I feel like some of them were overthrown. He was pressured a little bit. But even when he was pressured, you know, you saw he made adjustments. When he was pressured in first halves, you know, he'll throw it. It'll be a bad throw. It could be a turnover-worthy play. But sometimes in the second half, he'll start to run the ball. You know, he'll start to use his feet, be more creative, you know. And I think a lot of what the Chiefs are going to do is I think the same game plan they had against the Bills. You know, allow them to run the ball, allow them to gash it up. But just this offense is so explosive with Debo, with Kittle, with Ayuk. You get both things in play. This could be a dangerous thing. So I do think CMC taking him away is going to be the most important thing. But definitely honing in on not too many big-time plays. At the end, I do believe CMC, but it all comes back in circle to Brock Purdy. If he does not play well, this team does not win. You know, we can talk about CMC being the most important guy. We can talk about him having a $150. But if Brock Purdy does not play good to great for 4 straight quarters, this team does not have a chance to win. It's always going to come down to that because he is the guy they're going to put the most pressure on. And, you know, when you got guys like Kittle, you got guys like Debo, you got guys like Ayuk, you know, this is a different, like I mentioned, this is a different defense. This is a different defensive coordinator. You have not seen this in the NFC at
It's a scary
all.
fucking team, man.
You know, this is a scary defense.
Fucking hate 'em.
And this is also where legends become made. You know, this is also where legends become legends. You know, Lamar hasn't done it. Josh, he played great, but he unfortunately did not win the game. Of course, Tua can't do it. But how can Brock Purdy be the guy to do it?